Welcome back to the Haunting Hour, the home where shadows whisper and the unseen lurks in every corner. If this video sends a shiver down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more chilling tales, and ring the bell to never miss an eerie episode. I'm eager to hear from you, so after the video, comment below to tell me which story you like the most and what haunting tales you'd like to hear next. Now, gather your courage because it's time to dive into the first story. Let's see if you can handle the haunting. It was just past midnight when I decided to take a drive. I needed to clear my head after a rough day, and the quiet streets at night always help me relax. I took the usual route out of town, past the flickering streetlights and the familiar glow of the 24-hour diner. But tonight, something felt off. A strange restlessness stirred inside me, urging me to try something different. So, I turned onto an old road I'd never noticed before, hidden by overgrown bushes and shadowed by towering trees. The road was narrow and twisted like a snake. As I drove deeper, the comforting glow of the town lights faded behind me, swallowed by the darkness of the dense woods. The only sound was the gravel crunching under my tires. Suddenly, my headlights flickered and then died, plunging me into darkness. I tapped the dashboard, confused and a bit scared, but they wouldn't come back on. I was about to turn the car around when I saw it, a faint light in the distance. Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, I slowly approached the light. It was coming from an old, battered television set sitting right in the middle of the road, illuminating the surrounding trees with its eerie static glow. I got out of the car, the chilly night air making me shiver. As I stepped closer, the static on the TV changed, forming into a grainy image of a car, eerily similar to mine. Suddenly, a loud, shrill laugh echoed from the TV, sending a chill down my spine. I turned to run back to my car, but it was gone. In its place was just an endless stretch of road, swallowed by the night. Heart pounding, I faced the TV again, only to see the screen now displaying a message. "Why did you come here, Alex?" My blood froze. How did it know my name? I stood there, staring at the flickering screen, trying to make sense of what was happening. The forest around me seemed to close in, the darkness pressing against my senses. The TV's static continued, the whispering noise almost sounding like voices calling out from the shadows. I tried to run, to escape the suffocating fear, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like the road had claimed me, rooted me to the spot. As I watched in horror, the screen shifted again. Now it showed a series of quick, choppy images. A car accident, a flashing ambulance, a lonely hospital room. The scenes were disjointed, but they struck a chord deep within me. They were familiar, too familiar. It dawned on me then. These were my memories. But how? And why here? Why now? The television flickered one last time and showed an image of two people standing on this very road. One was unmistakably me, and the other... I squinted through the dim light. It was a girl, about my age, her face blurred and indistinct. She was smiling, reaching out to me. As I watched, frozen, her image became clearer. My heart skipped a beat. It was Emily, my childhood friend, who had disappeared one summer night, never to be found. The voices grew louder, more insistent. "Come find me, Alex," they whispered, now clearly Emily's voice. I felt a surge of desperate hope mixed with fear. Was this a chance to find out what happened to her? To save her? or at least to know the truth. My fear momentarily forgotten, I stepped toward the TV. As my hand touched the cold screen, the world spun dizzyingly. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer on the road. I was standing at the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. The crash of the waves loud in my ears. The TV was gone. Instead, Emily was there, real and as vivid as my memories. She smiled sadly, her eyes filled with 1,000 secrets. "You found me," she said softly. "But now you must choose, Alex. Stay here with me, or go back to a life where you'll always wonder." The choice seemed impossible. How could I leave her again? But as I looked into her eyes, I realized this was her domain, a place between worlds. She had found her peace, and now it was my turn to find mine. With a heavy heart, I chose to return, waking up in my car as if nothing had happened. The sun was rising, casting long shadows on the road that seemed just like any other road now. But as I drove away, I knew nothing was the same. Emily had given me a gift, a twisted, painful gift of closure, wrapped in the echoes of a night I would never fully understand. I drove home in silence, the weight of the night's revelations hanging heavy in my heart. Yet somewhere deep inside, I felt a strange sense of peace. The road had changed me, and I knew I would never fear the dark again. It was just past midnight when I decided to take a drive. The full moon hung low, casting eerie shadows across the road, making the night feel more alive. My friends always talked about the thrill of late-night drives, how the quiet and the solitude could make the world seem different. I was craving that escape, a break from the suffocating routine of daily life. The highway was unusually empty, not a single car in sight, which was odd for a Friday night. I rolled down the windows, letting the cold night air fill the car. The radio played softly in the background, a steady stream of late-night talk shows and old rock songs. Everything was normal until I noticed the reception starting to crackle. Annoyed, I reached to adjust the dial when the radio suddenly went silent. Before I could react, a harsh whisper replaced the music. "Leave," it hissed, so faint I thought I imagined it. I shook my head, blaming my imagination. Maybe I was just tired. I decided to turn back, feeling uneasy, when I saw it. A figure standing by the roadside, barely visible in the dim light. As I approached, it became clearer. A girl, no older than I was, dressed in a white, tattered dress, her hair messy and wild. She looked lost. Slowing down, I couldn't just leave her there. "Do you need help?" I called out, my voice betraying a hint of my fear. She didn't respond, just stared. As I stopped the car, she moved towards me. Her eyes, I'll never forget those eyes, empty, as if life had long left them. "Can I give you a lift?" I asked, trying to sound calm. She nodded slowly and got into the car. The air around us grew cold, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I wanted to ask her where she was going, but the words wouldn't come out. She just pointed forward. So I drove, the silence in the car growing heavier with each passing mile. As we drove, I glanced at the rearview mirror and noticed her reflection wasn't there. My heart skipped a beat, and a cold dread settled over me. Turning to look at her, she was still there beside me, staring ahead. The radio flickered back to life. This time a voice clearer, more urgent. "Leave now." That's when I realized something was horribly wrong. As the radio's warning echoed in my ears, panic set in. I glanced at the girl, her face illuminated by the moonlight, revealing a sorrowful expression that chilled me to the bone. Who are you? I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. She turned to look at me, her eyes hollow yet filled with an unspeakable sadness. Just drive, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the tires on the asphalt. I pressed the accelerator harder, the car's engine groaning under the strain as the road stretched endlessly ahead. Every logical thought told me to stop, to let her out and turn around, but my hands wouldn't obey. They gripped the steering wheel with a mind of their own, driven by an unseen force. Miles passed, and the scenery started to change. The trees grew denser, darker, their branches twisting into sinister shapes. The air turned colder, and a thick fog began to roll in, enveloping the car. I could barely see a few feet ahead. The atmosphere felt oppressive, heavy with a foreboding that made my chest tighten. The girl suddenly spoke again, her voice clearer, filled with urgency. "Stop the car." I obeyed without thinking, slamming the brakes. The car skidded to a halt at the edge of a cliff, a precipice that hadn't been on the map, overlooking a dark, infinite abyss. Heart pounding, I looked at her, questions racing through my mind. "Why did you bring me here?" She opened the car door, stepping out into the fog. "This is where it happened," she said, her voice echoing in the still night. "This is where I died." I felt a cold wave of realization. She was a spirit, trapped in the moment of her death, replaying her final journey. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice a mix of fear and compassion. "Help me find peace," she said, turning to face the void. "Help me leave this road." Gathering my courage, I stepped out of the car, approaching her at the cliff's edge. "How can I help you?" I asked, my fear subsiding, replaced by a resolve to help this lost soul. "Remember me. Tell my story," she replied, her form beginning to fade into the mist. As she vanished, the fog lifted, revealing the road leading back to the familiar world I knew. I got back into the car, the night suddenly seeming less menacing, the moon casting a gentle glow over the highway. I knew then what I had to do. I had to share her story, to ensure she was not forgotten. As I drove back, the radio crackled to life again, this time playing a soft melody, a stark contrast to the ominous warnings before. I smiled slightly, a sense of relief washing over me. The road behind me felt different now, no longer just a path of asphalt, but a passage between worlds, between stories left untold and those remembered. It was just after midnight when I decided to take the long way home. The full moon hung like a silver coin in the sky, casting eerie shadows across the deserted highway. I always enjoyed late-night drives. They gave me a sense of peace and solitude that the daytime just couldn't offer. But tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, as if the night itself was holding its breath. As I drove, the only sound was the hum of the car's engine and the occasional rustle of leaves blown by the wind. The road was surrounded by thick woods, and in the pale moonlight, the trees looked like twisted figures watching as I passed. Suddenly, my car's radio, which had been off, crackled to life. Static filled the speakers, then a faint voice whispered through the white noise. I couldn't make out what it was saying, and as I reached to turn it off, the car headlights flickered and went out. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, and came to a stop in the middle of the pitch-black road. I tried the lights again. Nothing. The car was dead. With a shaky breath, I reached for my phone to call for help, but it was dead too, despite being fully charged when I left home. That's when the silence of the night was shattered by a soft tapping on my window. I froze, too afraid to look. The tapping continued, persistent, as if urging me to turn my head. Gathering every ounce of courage, I slowly turned to face the window. There was nothing there. I let out a sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. The tapping moved, now coming from the other side of the car. Again, I saw nothing through the glass. That's when the realization hit me. The tapping wasn't coming from outside the car. It was coming from the back seat. Heart racing, I barely managed to whisper, "Who's there?" My voice was drowned out by the pounding of my own heartbeat. There was no reply, just the soft tapping continuing behind me. It felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of the car, but the overwhelming fear of what might be lurking in the woods kept me frozen in place. Then, a voice, low and raspy, broke the silence from the back seat. "Drive!" it commanded. I spun around, my eyes straining in the darkness, but I could barely make out a shadowy figure. It was just an outline, a darker patch of black against the night. I couldn't see any details, couldn't even tell if it was human. "Drive now!" the voice insisted more urgently. I didn't know what to do. My car wouldn't start. My phone was dead, and I was miles from the nearest town. But the fear in the voice pushed me to act. I turned the key in the ignition, not expecting anything to happen. To my shock, the engine roared to life, the headlights piercing the darkness. As I accelerated, the figure leaned forward, its breath cold against my neck. "Don't stop, no matter what you hear or see," it whispered. I pressed harder on the pedal, the car speeding down the winding road. Branches scratched against the windows like fingers trying to pull us back into the darkness. Then, the road ahead was blocked by a fallen tree. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop inches from the massive trunk. My mysterious passenger spoke again. "Get out and move it, quickly." With trembling hands, I opened the car door and stepped into the chilly night air. The woods seemed to close in around me, the moon now hidden behind thick clouds, plunging the world into deeper darkness. As I approached the tree, I heard rustling in the bushes and the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Panic set in, but I pushed the fear down and focused on moving the heavy branches. Suddenly, the air was split by a high-pitched scream from the direction of the car. I spun around, dread gripping me, and sprinted back. But when I reached the car, there was nothing amiss. No one around, and the back seat empty. I got back into the driver's seat, heart pounding, and drove away as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I reached home, constantly checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see that shadowy figure or hear that voice again. But there was nothing. It was just me, alone with the night and a chilling sense that I had escaped something unexplainable. What was that voice? Why did it help me? I might never know, but one thing was clear. I'd never take that road again. Thank you for joining me tonight on The Haunting Hour. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps me bring more chilling tales straight to your screen. If you're not yet part of our ghostly gathering, click subscribe and ring the bell to not miss out on any of our haunted adventures. And I'm curious, which story tonight creeped you out the most? Drop a comment below to let us know. Your favorite stories fuel our dark fires and inspire more spooky tales. Also, what kind of scary stories do you want to hear next? Tell me in the comments. Your wish might just become our next nightmare. Until next time, keep the lights on and keep the spirits at bay. Good night, and remember, never venture alone into the dark.